Okay, do we have a,
So I
draft
did not send anything in advance, and I'm looking at my notes, and the only thing I have is that I will share information about the budget.
okay,
think-
yeah,
Erin, tell me what I'm missing, please.
I think the subdivision, the one behind Julie Manley's lot, is in the 500s. I cannot think of the street.
Mosley? Oh, yeah, Edenton.
I
519.
think that will be, all of the reviews will be complete and it's ready to be placed on the agenda. I need to double check though.
okay, are there any follow-up on any of the other stuff that we've had to go through? Talking about the zoning and things? No? Gaston, you're muted, I think.
Have we heard anything from the Oberlin Village development proposed vote? Have we heard anything, any intel on the ground as to what they're going to do next, if anything?
No.
No, we're assuming that the whole thing was, they were calculating that they were gonna have to appeal. And, so we'll be working to be sure that the findings of fact are real good. And, that will come on, for approval at the next, COA meeting. And, from there, if they appeal, it goes to Superior Court, not the Board of Adjustment. And the ball would get handed to Raz, and he would probably pull in somebody else from the city attorney's office also. I'm guessing. But so no, we don't have to do anything about that at the business meeting. And the staff knows that I had ended up returning a call on behalf of y'all yesterday to a guy that used to be at head of archives and history or something like that, and I could find it in the email, but he was bummed that that we didn't do a good enough job informing people about the Daniels house coming up, and that what was the word he used, that we were guilty of? It wasn't presenter, but anyway, the notion.
Presentism.
Present is,
Yeah.
which I've never heard.
I hadn't heard it, but it's an interesting term anyway, that we were guilty of presentism and allowing whatever the current values are to control how we looked at history, and that he said, heck, even the Bolsheviks didn't bulldoze the Winter Palace in Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I was in a meeting last night, and they're telling me about how there's going to be 13 houses on that site, and et cetera. So anyhow, but next month, that'll be Gaston returning that call. So
Yeah.
so,
You have
I mean, it was
the
we had a good
patience, the patience of Job, and the smoothness of, I don't know who, Richard. Hard shoes.
we had a good conversation. He was actually, I'm sure he's pretty far to the right politically, but he grew up in the first capital of Ohio, which of course was a nice segue for me to ask him, okay, I give up, tell me what was the first capital of Ohio, and it turned out to be Chillicothe. And so he talked about how I've forgotten what his name was, but the first in his family to come here was in Sherman's army in 1865 or whatever, was in Raleigh. Anyhow, I guess it underscores that we've had a couple of instances where we've heard about it from people that didn't like what we were doing, and the people who, if people knew about it, the others, you don't hear from people when it's okay. You only hear about it when they're bothered by it. So be it. So anything particular from the committees? Okay, you want to report on nominations? You think you'll know more by the time we get that meeting?
No, because the next meeting of the city council will be on the 15th, which is the same day as our meeting, so they will meet in the afternoon of the 15th. So at the present time, they have approved one appointment of Curtis Case-Fong, and they will be voting between two candidates on the 15th. Bridget,
Horton?
Bridget,
Phillips, I think.
Bridget Phillips and Sandy Feaster.
Okay, so they're voting between so there are no new names other than ones that we put on our material.
That's correct.
And so it turned out that the mayor was not after Curtis Case-Fang. She just doesn't want both nominees to come from Oakwood. And so we're based on that, but it's interesting that they're going to consider both of them. And we provided information on both, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Because that spreadsheet had demographic information and all on Sandy Feaster, right? So we've been even handed once we surfaced with the other name.
Her resume was also in the new packet as well.
Okay.
Kay provided me a wonderfully helpful summary of the events because I was just trying to make sure I understood how the sequence went. And if anybody wants a copy, let me know. And if Kay's okay with me using, I cut and pasted her email, which actually gives me a nice blow by blow, so to speak, of the sequence of events in case you want to know. But if you don't want to know, it's okay.
I had a very simple set of instructions. Email Kay, and then you find out whatever it was you need to know. So, all right. Well, so that'll take care of that one. Anything on research?
Just a few updates. We have 2 requests for reviews. We talked a little bit about how the meeting went with the Mordecai CAC. And I believe Katie's going to bring up something she learned about 119 and 115 North Boylan. Apparently they plan to develop those lots.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I was curious. So yeah, there's a pending rezoning of 115 and 119 North Boylan. Both of those homes, I think, were there in 1905 or sometime in that decade. And I was one of them is split up into some apartments. I was trying to move there and then learned of this rezoning. And apparently there's an NCOD in that area that they're trying to lift to demolish the homes and rezone to build a 7-story office building. I don't know if we wanted to comment on that, if it would be helpful to comment on that. It does seem like there's support from the neighbors just based off of the comments that I've seen online, but I assume a lot of the neighbors probably don't know that this rezoning is happening.
What are the addresses again?
115 and 119 North Boylan.
Let's see. So Tanya, what is protected over there? The house that probably on the corner, which would be would be below 100 is the former Chief Justice, et cetera, et cetera. That's sort of right.
The nearest landmark is the Tucker Carriage House, and that's diagonally across the block.
I thought that the house, the huge house that is about 100 yards off Hillsborough Street is a big deal.
So
Yeah,
there's
Elmwood.
Elmwood that's a little further away. And that's 18, 16 North Boylan.
Not what I'm talking about. The one I'm talking about would be like, number 30 North Boylan. Or
There's Elmwood, the landmark house. Is that what
yeah,
you're referring to?
Elmwood.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, yeah. The carriage house is on the backside of the same block, so it's right there, but it's just the footprint of the building, and then Elmwood's a little bit further down the street toward Hillsborough.
Okay, the carriage house isn't it on St. Mary Street? Am I wrong? Yeah, but what Katie's talking about is Boylan, North Boylan, so we'll have to see what that is.
I'm showing you the map real quick. The red is.
I thought maybe it was an earlier time, but I thought the master plan called for preservation of residential all up through North Boylan there. And that the other uses were going to be on Glenwood or maybe St. Mary's.
Well, I
Okay,
think
so
that's the idea, which is why you have the NCOD.
yeah,
So that's, they'll have to make that would be part of their request. So you can see, but there may be other factors
yeah,
in their rezoning.
yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I think we should have a discussion about that and see what folks think. And it may be that if you don't want all that to be gone, you'll better go ahead and take a stand on the first one. So,
Yeah,
see
it
what
looks
happens.
like they had an initial meeting in March, and then since then I haven't seen much about what the next steps are. But I do know there are some one of the homes is a dentist office, and the dentist owns both of the buildings. Then the other one is some apartments, and there are some long-term residents in there who are going to be displaced.
So
They have their second neighborhood meeting scheduled for June 7th.
Okay.
yeah,
They're
and
scheduled to be on the planning commission on the 24th.
Okay. Well, we don't, and of course, we aren't trying to control uses, but we need to have a sense of what's the scale of the neighborhood and the structures. And realistically, what do they say about the 1930s, if that's when they were mostly built? So, but yeah, we can talk about that and maybe be ahead of it a little bit before it pops up. And let's see, what are we going to have coming from community awareness? Do you know?
We had a meeting Tuesday to talk about what kind of message we want to send and what method we want to use to send the message to homeowners and potentially to realtors. I think at least a few of you here were at that meeting. So we left that meeting with the goal that when we met again in July, that we've got everybody's brainstorming down on paper and we'll pick a direction at that meeting and then start working towards it. So
the COA was invited to the community awareness meeting, and because folks on community awareness wouldn't have had the same background on enforcement issues and the perception that there's a lot of people moving into these areas that may be aware that it generally that it's historic, but they don't really know what comes with territory, and they sort of accidentally on purpose go on and do stuff without, and some of it turns out not approvable in hindsight. And then we want to try, the COA committee wants to try to begin to get a handle on backing up and doing something about some of the people that have just bootleg stuff in, that if it's not approvable. We see it often where people bring up things and we think that's not a precedent because they did that illegally. And so that's generally what that discussion is about. So there'll be a little bit of that, and I assume we'll get sort of an update about what I've just finished telling you from the Community Awareness Committee. And wasn't there a particular property, and they were talking about doing another card collection or something else to on things that the committee was working on before COA got in on it?
Yeah, the meeting before this last one, they talked about not doing the full quite full-throated one, but picking another property and doing it once a quarter or once every so often and see how it goes. And Aaron made some notes. So it was back on the one thing about the COA process. We kind of bubbled up a bunch of ideas, and we have some people with assigned activities to pursue. One of which was to try to figure out a way to educate realtors, for instance, or at least give them an opportunity to receive education about their obligations and about what it means and not means, because apparently they should be disclosing to purchasers that they're buying a home in a historically protected area.
Yeah.
Should
But our fear is that just goes right over the head of these buyers as to what that really means when the words are uttered. So anyway, okay. Anything else?
I have one. When you get through the committees, let me know. I have one issue to make sure you're alerted to.
Okay, Katie.
Yeah, I had a community awareness related question. Yesterday on research, we kind of got into a discussion about some outreach bits and how to kind of set the record straight with people in neighborhoods who might not understand RHDC process or what the actual facts are. I was curious. I feel like there's probably at least a handful of neighborhood, Facebook groups or groups on Nextdoor or something. Would it be okay with everyone here, if see some of that activity to like identify myself as a listener, or even go in there and just kind of be like, hey, I'm here to answer questions. Like, this is, if it's I don't know, like if Mordecai has a Facebook page for some of the neighbors or something, to go in and ask the admin. It's kind of a half-baked idea right now currently, but it was something that I was just thinking of this morning. Just went in and kind of made ourselves available and just to say hi, especially since especially Mordecai, we're getting a lot of press right now with them wanting to maybe move forward with the HOD and some of the other neighborhoods that are on our radar. Any thoughts about that?
One of the ways to do it, I guess, would be to just to say something like, if you have specific questions or things you don't understand, if you post them, we'll try to get them to the RHDC so that you get accurate information or answers, and that avoids you being hung out to dry, and we make sure that we are consistent with whatever we put on any particular neighborhood.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
I think just like getting people from point A to point B to get them the correct information, or even directing them to to staff or, to one of us, or so that we can field those questions, just to be more available and accessible where people spend time on the internet.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Good idea. Gaston, you had something?
Yeah, just to alert you to something, most of y'all know Joe Holt. He's associated loosely with the Friends of Oberlin Village. He's a prince of a fella. He's an honorable veteran. He's kind of like the sage or the soul of Oberlin Village. He's unlike some involved in that. He's very calm, rational, and he's a veteran, and he parses he dissects information very carefully, and he's very, yeah. He wrote an email to his group of folks who follow him, and I'm one of them, having been on Oberlin's board. He raised an issue that might come up, might not, maybe it'll dissipate. He was surprised to find out that Myrick, in his memo to us about the designation of the Graves Fields house, used the term Oak Crest. Oak Crest term is not in any of the humans' recollection that that's what the house was called, or that name is foreign to all the Oberlin residents, the people. And he very calmly says he's upset that that's being called Oak Crest when no one knew it. They knew it by the Graves Fields house or the Graves Fields house or by other names, or the Willis Graves house. He just raised that issue to his group of email associates, and I just read it on Wednesday. He wrote it on Tuesday, and I finally read it on Wednesday. I called Joe and said, Joe, I'm not calling you as a member of the RHDC or anything, but would you please just call Myrick and ask him what process he used to reach that conclusion in the memo to the RHDC? And I'm assuming he has or will, because I alerted Myrick he was going to get a call, and I assume they've talked, but I haven't heard back from either one of them. Oak Crest, by the way, I sent them some images. I went into the house before it was renovated, before it stabilized to be moved. And Oak Crest, as big as the world, is over the transom on the front door in stainless steel. Yeah, it's stained glass. And it's either one of two things. It, in fact, was known as Oak Crest. Maybe I'll know that. Or one of the owners, they used some found materials to make additions to that house, and maybe he found the stained glass and liked it and put it in the transom coincidentally.
It shows up on one of the Sanborn maps also.
Yeah, so I asked him just to call Myrick and talk to him about his concerns, and so we may or may not hear something. It may just be as simple as the order of the names in the application. I don't know. I haven't looked at the material since we talked about it, but I just needed to alert you to there may be some issue.
But it's not the first I've heard of it. Now, maybe Myrick was telling me we might hear about it, or maybe it was in one of the programs that we've seen. I don't recall, but it's not total news to me that there is that question or that name is in use.
I think Sabrina brought it up at the meeting.
She did. That's right. Good recollection. She brought it up somewhere.
So this is a National Register nomination that was prepared by Preservation North Carolina, sent to the State Historic Preservation Office, and you saw it just as part of the regular review of all National Register nominations. The National Register Advisory Committee for the state meets on June 9th. And then based on their decision, it will likely then get sent to the National Park Service. So if you do speak to him again, or I guess, Myrick, I think talking to the State Historic Preservation Office is the next best step. If that's a concern. I mean,
what's the name of the actual office? It's going to be June 9th meeting?
Well, the National Register Advisory Committee is what's meeting, but it is staffed by the State Historic Preservation Office. And I actually just did you get that too? I just noticed in my emails today, we got a link to the meeting since it's virtual.
Can you could you give me offline after the meeting, can you send me
Yeah.
how I can tell Joe and Myrick if they want to get together and have a tete-a-tete and amend or make an adjustment to the presentation to resolve this before it gets to be an issue?
Okay, they'll have to reach out to the staff because the staff actually makes the presentation, but I will send you the information I have.
Yeah, I thought it was an opportunity to avoid an issue. If there's a reasonable ground to put Oakcrest at the back of the name instead of the front of, anyway, there might be. I just didn't want it be something that shouldn't have to be, and the best way for it to be resolved is for Joe and Myrick to sort it out a little bit first and then go to staff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we care. They change the name, whatever they do, switch the name around as long as they don't call it something.
No, not at this point. The only place that you would get involved is, and actually, Myrick asked me this question and I haven't looked it up yet. So when the house was moved, it no longer became a Raleigh Historic Landmark. And although it is on the same property as the Plummer-T. Hall house, which is a landmark, it is technically itself not a Raleigh Historic Landmark at the moment. And he asked me a question if the RHDC had said we were going to do that. And I, in the email, basically shrugged and said, I'll have to look into it. So if that does come through, you will then have the opportunity to choose what name you want it to be called as a Raleigh Historic Landmark.
Is the parcel of land a landmark in its entirety? And the part.
It is.
Yeah, okay.
It
So
is,
doesn't
but the plaque doesn't have the other house. The nomination designation report doesn't include the other house.
Right, okay. All right.
It-
The backstory is the other two factoids that I have is that Joe Hope was one of the first African-American folks to integrate the schools in Raleigh. And his daughter is Deborah Holt Noel on public TV. And it does underscore the amount of talent that came out of Oberlin Village. And so he's featured in that film that was made too, that Myrick's group back.
Yeah, he, if you have the occasion to meet him, take the time to strike up a conversation. Your life will be enriched for having known him.
So, okay, is there anything else, staff, that we need to mention? Meetings coming up, things we should be aware of?
Could I have an offline chat after we finish with Tanya and Janine and Ian?
Okay.
If you're in the room, please.
Can we give a link to the business meeting and the COA meeting to Curtis if it's now known that he's appointed?
Sure, his appointment doesn't take place he doesn't start until July, but he of course is more than
Well, I know
welcome.
it doesn't start, but I just thought about it in terms of orientation.
Yep.
He could hit the ground running if we tell him if he wants to watch one.
Can do.
We'd be glad for him to do that. So, okay, that's it then. All right, 30 minutes. Not too bad. Talk to y'all later.